Welcome, welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Wigs for Wigs. I'm Joe Cook, and I'm joined once again by two members of our panel, by Bill Venezia and Judge Eddie Defazio. And, well, Election Day has come and gone. We were all wrong. Daniel, who was the one who called Donald Trump winning, won't be joining us today, but we'll all eat crow together here at the beginning of Thanksgiving week. But then we'll move on and we'll talk about what to look forward to and some of the other things that have been going on in the news. So, how are you both doing today, Bill?
Joe, you're spooling a little bit.
Yeah, our Wi-Fi has not been good here at work, so we'll see what it is. Are we back? It looks like you guys are back.
Here we're back. We're back. Yeah.
Right.
What's the issue? That's a tablet or
It's our Wi-Fi here. It's been bad the last few days, so
okay. All
we'll
right.
deal with it as best we can.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so how are we both doing?
Well,
Good. Very good.
So, Bill, what went wrong?
A number of things. One, I think that the biggest thing for me is the Harris campaign. I saw more ads about anti-trans, anti-LGBT ads during sporting events aimed specifically at men during the last 3 weeks leading up to the election. And I thought that the Harris campaign had the money to counter those ads, and they didn't. I think they got beat up with the culture war. I think that there's also was somewhat of a enthusiasm problem with the Democrats. I think part of that has to do with the fact that Biden didn't waited too long, dragged his feet. He didn't get out of the race soon enough. I guess his wife talked him into sticking around too long, and I think that aided the fact that she was going to lose, especially the so-called blue wall. When it comes down to it, the Democrats really have some soul searching to do. They really basically, we can talk about that later, but I think that she did the best job she could do, and I really don't think they got their economic message out as well as they could have. So those things are cumulative, and I think truthfully, I think there's a great David Brooks editorial op-ed piece, and the name of it is "Voters to Elites. Do you see me now?" And it's really worth a read. I don't agree with all the premises in the article, but he did a good job of an autopsy of the election and specifically the shortcomings of the Democrats. My personal opinion is that if they don't tack more to the center and they don't find their next Bill Clinton, maybe Andy Bashir, they're going to be in the wilderness. But we could talk more about that later.
Yeah, let's get initial thoughts from the judge, and then I want to circle back to that.
well, I think it came down to money. And when I say came down to money, I don't mean the money that the campaigns spent, which is, by the way, obscene. But that's for another day. That's for another day. I thought, and I had said this, as you know, and I know that I think we all felt this way to some degree. I thought the character would, and I use this word advisedly, trump policy. But when it came down to it, people were angry about what they were paying for goods and services. And that was very difficult for the Democrats to counter. The Democrats really should have concentrated more, I thought, on the economic issues and what solutions might be offered. But you know what? When I've thought about this and looking back and seeing what happened and the states that Trump carried, I think the American public, as I said, is just very, very angry. And We don't see it to the degree here in New Jersey, like it is in other parts of the country. And I think the Democrats have to stop fooling themselves about some things. Billy's 100% correct. And this is something that I've said for a while. The Democrats have to come to the middle, because the United States is a center-right country. There's no way around it.
Mm-hmm.
The elections through the years have proved it. The only time now in recent history where the Democrats have prevailed are when they offer a moderate candidate. There's no way around it. And if the Democrats aren't going to retool, they proceed at their own peril. So
Yeah,
I just want to say, though, having said what I just said, I think we've seen in history where parties that have been knocked around, all right, have the capability to come back relatively soon.
yeah, right. I mean, 1984. I mean, Ronald Reagan won 49 states in 1984. 8 years later, a Democrat won the presidency, and even 4 years later, George Bush, until about a month before the election, was trailing Dukakis, 88 polls. So, I mean, that was not the Democratic Party being left for dead. But I am concerned personally that the Democrats are going to autopsy this wrong and think, because I've heard this from Democrats, maybe it's just the MSNBC world, but thinking that they need to tack more to the left. Right? You hear this from some of these Democrats, that our problem was we tried to appease too many moderates and too many Republicans, and we didn't excite our base enough, and we need to be more liberal. And I agree with both of you that that's the complete wrong approach and takeaway to have from this election. But
another sad takeaway, Joe, is that it's kind of the last 2 out of 3 Democratic candidates were women, and I think the situation with Harris' election, when you compare it to Clinton's election, Mrs. Clinton, it's gotten worse, and I think it's set back the glass ceiling a lot further, in terms of a woman being elected president. And I think there are competent women that could serve in that capacity. But this loss really, casts shade on that to a certain degree.
Isn't there something disgustingly poetic about Donald Trump beating 2 women?
Yeah, I mean, it's misogyny personified.
Our first, convicted found liable sexual abuser.
Adjudicated rapist is the one I prefer. It's sad. I mean, but think about it. But
which brings me to something else I wanted to talk about today, which is his cabinet. He's been naming people to his cabinet. So far, we've gotten Matt Gaetz, who thankfully withdrew his name, but really that was just a ploy to get the whole ethics report buried for him about his sexual misconduct. We have this Hegseth guy from Fox News who's nominated for Secretary of Defense and has a very credible rape accusation against him that he paid the woman to drop a few years ago, and did not really deny a few days ago when it came out. He kind of just said, well, that matter is settled, meaning I paid the woman to drop the charges against me. We have Robert Kennedy Jr., who's got his own issues with things outside of his marriage to Cheryl Hines and dealing with women. We have, who else do we have? It seems like almost a prerequisite to have a sexual abuse allegation against you, or be a Russian asset like Tulsi Gabbard to get nominated for the Trump cabinet.
Or being the head of a wrestling organization to head the department,
who covers up sexual abuse allegations against her husband. So,
or being a dog killer.
Yeah, being a dog killer too. I forgot about the dog killer, who's going to be in charge of Homeland Security, because nothing prepares you for Homeland Security like being the governor of South Dakota, keeping us safe from Dakota, I guess.
But she's a good shot. She's a good shot.
Well, we don't know how many shots it took her to kill the dog or the gun or anything else.
We don't.
She killed them. Not how many shots it took.
It's interesting though, getting back to the appointment process, that Trump wants to bypass, or would rather bypass the process
Which is
by installing
nonsense.
but I don't know if that's going to fly with Thune. I don't know if it's going to fly with
I don't.
Johnson.
No, you know what? Honestly, Bill, that would be a real surprise to me if they avoid the advise and consent process. I don't think that is going to happen. Unfortunately, I think with Gates or Getz, whatever, withdrawing his name.
How about forgets?
Yeah. It's given, unfortunately, the president cover with some of these other nominees. And I don't know. I mean, you look at Robert Kennedy Jr. Now the guy is a kook. All right, but I'm getting the impression, and maybe I'll be proved wrong, but I'm getting the impression that he's getting some traction with that nomination now. And I don't know. It is some rabble when you look at the group. I mean, it is extraordinary. But that'll take its course.
Along those lines, Eddie, think of this: that Bobby Kennedy has the credentials. Does he have the credentials to run HHS? And the idea that Dr. Oz would report to him, I mean, you can't even make it up. It's science fiction.
It's extraordinary. I agree with you.
But I'll tell you what I was somewhat happy about. Thune was not Trump's choice. Rick Scott was his choice.
Yeah.
Rick Scott had 13 votes. 15 went to John Cornyn, and then obviously Thune won. I think the votes for Cornyn would have gone to Thune anyway. So we'll see if Thune has the courages of convictions or if he rolls over. It would be very interesting. I got a feeling that Hegspeth, Gabbard, and Kennedy really faced a tenuous time through the Senate. And I'm not so sure that Thune is enthused about, their candidacy for those positions.
You really think 4 Republican senators have a spine? They've grown one over the last few years?
Well, I tried to look at this and pick it off. You still have candidates in this. You still have senators that basically that not going to get primaried in the midterm. You know what I mean? And that gives them some cover to basically vote their conscience. And I think there are some. You still have Linda Murkowski. You still have
Murkowski and
Collins. I don't know which way the wind blows with Collins in Maine. You do have who's the guy in North Carolina?
Tom Tillis. Tom Tillis. Yeah.
Tom Tillis. I called him Tullis. But I think there are some more too. Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia. Todd Young, and also Kennedy, who basically voted for his impeachment. I think there are people there that could possibly stand up. Now, that might be wishful thinking on my part, that they'll put country over party. But I think the possibility does exist that basically, candidates like Hesbeth, Gabbard, and Kennedy do go down. And I think there's some kind of sick, rationale on Trump's part, because these people make him look good.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are people who are talking about him playing this kind of 4-dimensional chess, and I don't know. I don't think he has the brain capacity for 4-dimensional chess. I think he'd struggle with tic-tac-toe, but I think he just...
Joe, you're correct as far as that goes, but I really think, despite the fact that all through the years we've been hearing that Trump is his own man and makes these spontaneous decisions. I don't like to say this, but I'm beginning to think that that's not necessarily the case. I think that Trump is getting some very precise advice about playing chess as opposed to tic-tac-toe. And I'm concerned that we might be dealing with somebody who's smarter than we've given him credit for.
Well, Eddie, I agree. To underestimate him is at your own peril. I mean, the guy is a master brander and in marketing, and he comes with this natural angst of being a Queen's outsider. I'm taking that from that David Brooks article, where he always wanted to crack the Manhattan elites and never could. And there's so much resentment built up in him, so much anger, that I think that's part of the allure, because he was able to convince rural voters and blue collar voters, non-college educated, that it's okay to be angry and that he was going to be the vessel of your anger. And
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. He has tapped into what I was saying, that anger.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, in some cases that anger may be justified. But I'm going to say this: in a lot of cases, that anger is not justified.
Yeah, some of these
a lot of people.
No,
I think you're going to say, Joe, a lot of people who are angry, all right, never had it so good.
Yeah.
And it's time
with $60,000 yachts and vacation homes and all these other things complaining about how the economy is so bad. Give me a break.
Yeah. I think it's, and I don't know what the explanation for that is, but that's the.
Well, I think it's one we're not comfortable with, which is people are more racist and sexist than we'd like to think people still are.
Well, yeah, that's part of it. But I don't know. It's very discouraging. It's very discouraging when you have a conversation with somebody who is well off, comfortable, and then some, and they have all of this resentment, anger, whatever. Those are tough conversations for me. But anyway, and I do think you're right, and I know Bill feels the same way. Look, some of it is definitely racism, which translates to fear, which I guess translates to anger. I don't know. Yeah. But that's definitely in the mix.
There's a parallel to why, he got 33% of, say, minority voters, and the most since Bush did. And I think that there's the parallel in history. If you looked at the 1860s and you looked in New York specifically, where you had a big Irish population, you had a sizable Black population there too. There were riots between the Irish and the Blacks. There were race riots in New York City, and they felt like the Blacks were taking their jobs. They were refugees from the Civil War. It happened during the Civil War, and I think that basically dynamic plays with why Latinos voted for Trump in record numbers, as opposed to previous elections, because basically they feel they're established here. They see the new immigrants as interlopers, and basically taking away what they have secured from what they perceive to be the American dream. So they want to shut the door, and the sad part of it is, if we start the deportations and if we start basically kicking out people, and that is going to be, first of all, it's going to be costly, number one. Second of all, it's going to be indiscriminate. And that DACAs are going to get, swallowed up in this stuff. Not only DACAs, but also people who are dissident. And this is a good opportunity to basically get rid of your political opponents also. I mean, it's a playbook right out of the fascist and right out of communist regimes. And I basically think that that's part of the reason that last in, when you saw that, and I'm looking northeast, Germans came first, then the Irish, then the Italians, then the Puerto Ricans, and then you had this movement from the South by blacks. And it's always that the newest immigrants are the ones that take the brunt from the former immigrants, because basically they're invading their turf. I listened to my father in terms of growing up in Hoboken in Jersey City, and if you were Italian, you didn't go through an Irish neighborhood, without getting your ass kicked. And I think there's some of that there. I have a very good friend who I respect a great deal from Union City who came here when he was 12. And, he's his biggest anti-immigrant person I know. And part of it, I said, how could you feel this way? You yourself are an immigrant. You came here when you were 12 years old, and I think that dynamic played out in this election in terms of getting Trump what he needed to win. Because when I looked at I thought it was like, utter destruction. But again, Trump won the former Democratic blue wall, those states by small numbers. I mean, and as of, I looked at Cook's political report, and as of the 22nd of November, with 99% of the vote counted, there were still some votes to be counted in Arizona, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. It was 49.8% Trump, 48.2% Harris. I mean, all the news isn't that bad. It still was relatively close, not in the electoral votes. Obviously, that was a trouncing, 312 to 226. But when you look at that vote count, Democrats basically, I don't know if they should take solace in it, because, I don't know if you lose, you take solace in something like that. But it wasn't the utter destruction. And I think part of the reason is because they were not able to mobilize as, the turnout. And when you think about 220, Biden won by 7 million votes. Yeah. I mean, that's an ass kicking,
The only group that Harris outperformed Biden on was college educated white voters.
Yeah.
Every other group support went down for the Democrats. Every other demographic in the exit polls of this year, support for the Democrats went down for Kamala Harris compared to Joe Biden. And it bears out. She got millions of less votes than Joe Biden did.
That's
not because millions of fictional people or dead people voted for Joe Biden, like I hear some ridiculous Trump people say. It's because, well, the Democrats have to autopsy that and figure that out. But it is not because, the only group that she did better with was college-educated white voters. People
I'm gonna have to make a bigger donation. That's the Catholics internet.
That would be much appreciated by everybody. It's been a rough few days of our internet. But I knew, on election night.
Well,
on election night, how early did you?
It was called by quarter 12.
Because I knew it was going to be bad on election night when some of the traditionally red states, they were calling them right away when the polls closed, like usually happens with the states that we kind of know. But then for hours, they weren't calling New Jersey, Connecticut, Delaware, even New York. And if those states couldn't be called the moment that polls closed, I knew how it was going to play out in Pennsylvania, Michigan. So by about 8:30, I knew 9:30, I knew what was going to happen, to be honest.
Well, think about it. New Jersey only delivered a 5% majority.
51-46.
It's
that sets up an interesting commentary about what happens next year in New Jersey with the gubernatorial election.
Yeah. But also, if you look across the map, right, even the battleground states, Michigan elected a Democratic senator, but they voted for Donald Trump. Wisconsin elected a Democratic senator, but they voted for Donald Trump. Arizona elected a Democratic senator, but they voted for Donald Trump. Pennsylvania, Bob Casey outperformed Kamala Harris. He lost. The Republican won the Senate race in Pennsylvania, but Bob Casey did better than Kamala Harris did. In New Jersey, Andy Kim did better than Kamala Harris did. Josh Gottheimer, my congressman, who's now running for governor next year, did better in North Jersey than Kamala Harris did. So she underperformed Democrats at lower levels of the ballot across the board in these places where she needed to win. It was that she did not perform at the level that other Democrats did.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think that basically there was a definite lack of enthusiasm. And by the way, who's not running for governor in New Jersey? That's the question. I mean, it's.
I haven't thrown my hat in the ring yet, but it could come any day now.
Joe, I'd vote for you. But hey,
Democrats didn't vote for the top of the ticket like they should have. I mean, it's that simple now. The reasons why, we don't really know.
Does anybody else remember in 2012 when Mitt Romney lost and he came out afterwards and he said the Republicans need to really re-examine themselves because they had gone too deep into anti-immigrant fervor and things like that, and they needed to move back to reasonable centrism. And I don't know, clearly that's not the way the Republican Party went in the post-Mitt Romney era, but it's worked out for them. So maybe we're completely wrong that the Democrats need to move to the center. But you're right. It's because the country is a center-right party, so it wouldn't work for the Democrats in the same way it's worked for the Republicans to drift.
It's funny too, because of all people, David Brooks in that article I was referencing before said that he felt that Bernie Sanders would have been a better candidate than Harris. That's interesting, Bernie Sanders, but which would give some credence to people saying, Joe, like you were saying, that they think they should go tremendously to the left, and I don't think that's.
It won't work well for them.
By the way, in my adopted state of Vermont, Harris won 3-1.
That was the one state that was called immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you watched on election night, I mean, I was watching CNN. I assume the other networks were similar, but the only one they called immediately for Harris of all these Northeast, typically Democratic states was Vermont. The moment.
And by the way, they have a very moderate Republican governor who was reelected.
Yeah.
So that it's an interesting dynamic there, one that I don't think I'll ever understand. But anyway.
Yeah.
And by the way,
I do like Josh
last count, maybe like 600,000+ people live in this.
Yeah. I don't know. It is interesting to think about looking ahead what it means for a governor's race in New Jersey. I mean, I do like Josh Gottheimer. He's my congressman. I know him pretty well from up in Bergen County. But, I don't know other people who are planning to run as well as I know him.
I like Mikey Sherrill.
But is she planning? Has she announced that she's planning to run?
She has. She's announced. She's announced.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I mean, she gets elected in the primarily Republican area of Morris County. I mean, that it's
interesting. Some Passaic County in there too, and
a little Passaic County. But you know what? Hey, the guy Frelinghuysen was there for 30 years.
Yeah, Frelinghuysen had been in Congress from that part of New Jersey since the 1830s.
Yeah,
Henry Clay's running mate was a Frelinghuysen.
Pardon the interruption.
But,
Angel sound.
Tell Angel fix that darn internet.
Yeah, we've talked before. I mean, we had an episode way back. I think it was just you and me, Bill, where we talked about kind of people we could see as rising stars of the Democratic Party, and maybe it's our New Jersey bias, but we brought up Mikey Sherrill in that election because of her resume as a combat pilot, now as a congressperson. If she becomes governor, that sets her up well for the future.
Yeah, you know what? But and she has the bona fides and the credentials to run well. I mean, she's not going to be perceived as the left. She's definitely strong center right. Yeah, she's somebody that's on the there's a political horizon that bodes well for her. But I'm looking truthfully, if all the stuff that's coming down the pike about the recommitment to tariffs and everything. I don't see this. I don't see calm economic waters for Trump during the next 2 years. Those tariffs got to be paid by somebody. They're going to be paid by basically the people that are buying the goods.
Yeah, I can't wait to find out how tariffs work.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. that's some political gamble to go all in with the tariffs. And I like Joe just said, I don't know how it's going to work, um, frankly. But I just don't understand how um, Trump can try to justify 25% tariffs on Canada.
Yeah.
All right. Using fentanyl as the issue. I mean, that is just clearly pandering. And but putting that aside,
Well, remember,
put it
Canada
aside.
burned down the White House
If
in
you have
2012, according to Trump. So we're
Well,
getting
that's right, and it's time for retribution. You're
Time for
correct.
payback.
those
All right.
evil Canadians.
Yeah, no, they've been a problem. They have,
Sorry, go ahead, Judge.
but no, it is that ridiculous, Joe. By the way, but I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work.
You know what? I think there's a lot of political bluster here to get better deals, but he's stocking his advisorship with people who are very pro tariffs, very anti-China.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting to see his rhetoric about China the last couple of days, which I guess that's going to make South Korea and Taiwan feel better. But you know, I fear what's coming down the pike with Ukraine. But it's funny. What good does it do the American economy if we put Mexico and Canada into a tailspin with their economies because of tariffs? Immigration, you're going to have people lining up all the way down to Peru to get into this country. You know, and I don't understand that it does. But then again, what I'm thinking is that if there's any rational logic here, it's political in nature to basically work out some better deals for the United States with trade agreements. But I'm not sure that's the end game. You know what I mean?
You know, there's a student who, a few years ago, who gave me a book. It was a joke book. It was titled "Why Socialism Works," and if you flip through it, every single page just says it doesn't, it doesn't, it doesn't, it doesn't, it doesn't, it doesn't. And I feel like I could publish the exact same book about tariffs fixing inflation and high prices. Why tariffs will fix inflation and high prices? They won't. They won't. They won't. They won't. They won't.
You know, it's interesting too, because right now you got Chinese economy is reeling. It's not meeting what their expectations were. You know, there's I don't know how much. I mean, the view of the world. The world is so small right now. We live on this small planet. I mean, we basically have to interact with China for the betterment and for national security, for peace in Asia. You know, and I'm not sure that Trump grasps all that. And I honestly believe that, you know, he's your archetypical bully. He's going to bully people, but he could never back it up. I mean, I look at the centerpiece of Trump's jingoism and his masculinity when he notified the Russians he was going to bomb an airstrip in Syria, you know, and they cleared out and they dropped a few bombs and that was that, you know. I personally think that the Democrats also have to bank on too. He's self-destructing. I mean, he doesn't have a track record with midterm elections. I mean, he could be up in smoke in 2 years. You know what I mean? I definitely think that the Democrats, with the Republican slim majority, could win back the Congress in 2 years.
And he'll be 81 years old at that time.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I floated that balloon with people that I know. I said, I don't think he's going to make it. They said, you better pray that he makes it, because I don't think you're going to want Vance. That'll be Trump on steroids. You know,
well, it's amazing how all these appointments that are being made, not to the cabinet jobs, but to the White House staff, essentially, are full of people from the Project 2025 program that Donald Trump allegedly never heard of. Project 2025. I have nothing to do with Project 2025. He told us again and again. And yet already the Office of Management and Budget, White House Personnel Office, all these are going to be run by people that were co-authors of Project 2025, which J.D. Vance is a big part of also.
Of course he is. And you know what? I think that's the first. Well, I don't think it's the first thing to go, but there, get rid of the Department of Education. I mean, what's
No,
going
I'm
to
looking
happen?
forward to when I can do classroom management by slamming people with chairs and jumping
Yeah.
off in style onto
Off
students.
the off the top rope.
Hey, I mean, well, forget about that. Forget about the monies that go to it, basically, Pell Grants and things of that nature
Yeah.
that basically go to subsidize people who basically couldn't afford college, other than the fact that the government was helping them to get that. And I think the whole thing about, they want to dismantle the collegiate system because they think it spawns left-leaning thinkers.
Well, they
People
also
don't.
say that I'm performing sex change operations during my day because I have.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
Well,
That's why
You
Hudson
know,
Catholic isn't all
I'm
boys.
going to just say this. I'm not as concerned about that because I don't think that the Department of Education is going to be eliminated.
What were you saying, Judge?
Are we on?
Yeah, I think we're back now.
No, I was saying I don't think that the Department of Education, the Department of Education isn't going to be eliminated because that would take congressional action. And I'm much more concerned, and we had talked about it earlier, and I'm going to get back to it if you don't mind. I'm much more concerned about what this deportation policy is going to be. Certainly, I think we all should be concerned when you start hearing things about getting active duty military involved, and that you're going to have these detention facilities, camps, whatever. But then you see somebody else from the Trump administration, spokesperson, who I've seen interviewed on TV, very well spoken younger gentleman, who says that we're not going to have random mass deportations, that we are going to prioritize and we are going to concentrate on criminal aliens, convicted criminals, and to be frank with you, that has wide appeal. And the question is going to be if they go beyond that and they do start trying to deport the guy who has been here for 20 years, working, doing gardening or maintenance at one of Trump's golf courses, and you want to deport him and break up a family. I don't know if the American public can swallow that.
Well,
and I don't think they will. I don't think they will. Now, of course, I can be proved wrong again.
Hopefully there'll be newspapers around to basically document it, and hopefully the Tesla baron doesn't basically buy MSNBC.
Yeah. Well, that's what you mentioned that Billy, and that's a whole that's another serious concern, quite frankly. This situation with Musk, for a lot of reasons, for a lot of confluences there.
Well, there's a lot of conflicts there too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. There are conflicts all over, and Musk. Look, I'm going to put my opinion right out about this. Musk is not a good guy. All right, he is not a good guy. He said some very, very offensive things through the years, and
One interruption, Amari Moore.
He's a dangerous guy because of the money that he has.
Yep.
I mean, no disagreement here.
No. Well, it's we shall see what we shall see. It'd be good to get, next time we come on, it'd be good to get the good doctor's opinion and also Daniel's opinion from the winner's circle there. I think it's important to see, what he views as, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't see the economy as getting any appreciably better. I see it basically potentially taking a nosedive, and I think people have done pretty darn well over the past 4 years. 61% of Americans are invested at some point in the stock market or mutual funds. And I think their portfolios, their retirement monies have done pretty darn well. It'd be interesting to see what happens to that. Interesting to see what kind of assault on Social Security there is. And that's going to be a big issue, especially too when he's got, what's his name, Ramaswamy and Musk working on basically what is Plan 225's to cull the government,
Oh yeah,
I guess the dissidents.
They're gonna cut the government by 2/3, which is totally possible to do. But
the other Judge, I want to talk to you about it. What about the fact that they're trying to do an end run about FBI investigations, background checks on people that they want to appoint?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
been since Eisenhower.
We don't care for it, obviously, but I don't. There's no, from what I understand, there's no statutory requirement to do it. It makes sense, obviously, but I don't think it's required. And frankly, and I hate to say this, I don't think the public cares about that issue.
You're probably right. You're probably right.
This is it. You see, the three of us obviously have our perspective on things. But I'm sorry to say that a lot of the things that we care about, and rightfully so, unfortunately, a lot of people not interested. I'm not even going to say they don't care. Not interested.
Yeah.
And that's really basically, I think, the issue here is that the public is not interested, concerned, knowledgeable, whatever term you want to use, about these issues like we are. And I'm not saying this to say that we're smarter than those people. That's not my point. But I think it comes down to that.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'll say it. We are smarter.
Well, I think,
but
maybe
we go ahead, Bill, real quick, and then I want to move on to something to finish up here.
Yeah, I move on because I think we've somewhat exhausted this, and I'd like to get, like I said, the other two roundtable people to
so
weeks to come back and continues to settle.
Yeah, so I wanted to finish. I know it's been a little bit gloom and doom, but also just curious about what's going to go on over these next few years. But it is Thanksgiving week, so I figured we just close this by going one by one, 30 seconds each. So presidential debate format, because we can get everything in 30 seconds, right?
Yeah.
What are we thankful for here on this Thanksgiving week? Let's end on a positive note. So Bill, you can go first.
I wish Daniel was here because I actually I went to a wake, which was it was actually joyous. It was upstate New York. A good friend of my wife's sister passed. And the epistle at the funeral mass was from Jeremiah. And I'm not Bible versed or whatever, but it spoke of hope. And I have to say that it kind of lifted me a little bit out of the malaise that I was in. So it's the 29th chapter, 11th verse, and it talks about hope. And I still have hope. And I think that we live in the greatest country in the world still. And, I think that basically genuinely deep down, the American people make good decisions. And I think good decisions will be on the horizon for us.
Well, I think, Billy, that was well said. And, obviously we're thankful for our families and the fact that we are living here, doing well, and that we are fortunately in the greatest country on earth. And I agree with Bill that I think the American people, when it comes down to it, they will do the right thing, and good will prevail over evil.
For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. It's Jeremiah 29:11. And let's hope that our leaders have that same point of view, plans to prosper us, not to harm us, plans to give us hope and a future. Certainly I want that. Thankful for, of course, my family, my son who's 2, and I certainly want a great future for him in this country. And I'm also thankful for my 10-1 Detroit Lions who are going to take down the Chicago Bears on Thanksgiving. So everybody tune in. That's my latest bold prediction. Hopefully it goes better than my election prediction. But take care, everybody out there. Share with us at wigsforwigs@gmail.com. That is WIGSFORWHIGS at gmail.com. Any of your thoughts on this episode, or even just what you're thankful for here on this week of Thanksgiving, or whenever it is that you're listening to this. There's no wrong time to be grateful and thankful. We focus on it during Thanksgiving week, but also a feeling we should have throughout the year. So take care out there. We'll see you again soon for another episode of Wigs for Wigs. Bye-bye, everybody.